Here's how you're going to hear the audible voice of God. I recently released a video that's talking about the general way of how to hear God's voice. And obviously, God speaks in so many ways, but we're going to talk about how he speaks through, to us specifically. This one is going to be how God speaks to you audibly. For context, you can find this in 1 Samuel chapter 3, verses 3. For context, Samuel is laying down. He's literally sleeping. And he hears the voice of God and he says, Samuel. And he gets up and he says, here I am. That means he literally heard the voice of God because he heard somebody calling him. Obviously, at this point, he doesn't know that the Lord is calling him. So, he goes through that a few times. But this just shows us that God can speak to us audibly. However, it's not going to be the way that you think that it's going to be. This is why you need to have the general way of knowing how God speaks to you, which you'll see in my last video. So go check that out because that's how God speaks most of the time, other than his word when you're reading it, because he's also guiding us through his word and speaking to us through his word. The way that you're going to hear his voice audibly is when you're in that state of being asleep and awake. That's also called being in the spirit. Now, you can be in the spirit while you're awake, but typically God will only use that time where you're in between falling asleep and being awake, or literally coming back to being awake from sleep. Now, I don't know why God chooses to do it this way. I think it's just because we are most sensitive when we are asleep and awake. But this is the time where he speaks the most. This is where he'll give you prophetic words, or he'll tell you what to pray for, when you're literally on the verge of waking up. Sometimes he'll prevent you from certain attacks in your sleep. And so he'll literally jolt you awake, or he'll say your name, or he'll tell you to get up. Most of the time, though, when he's speaking audibly to you like this, sometimes it'll just be it'll be a whisper, he'll say something in your ear. Other times it will be so loud and so strong that you'll not only hear it, but it'll be through the whole course of your body. There was the very first time I heard God's audible voice, he was repeating Lamentations over and over. Lamentations, 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 Lamentations. All to the point where I even saw in my mind, while I was asleep, I saw a vision of the word Lamentations, on a huge screen. And I also felt the word Lamentations in my whole body. It was Lamentations, but lamentate, a jolt of him saying Lamentations over and over through my whole body to when I woke up, I literally could not deny the fact that God had spoken to me. However, when I received that word, I had just started ministry, and so I was literally in fervent prayer. I just knew that if I was going to lead a ministry, this girl's going to need to be praying. You can't just lead a ministry without prayer. And so there I was praying. Anytime I put in my heart, okay, it's time to pray. Oh my God, it's time to pray again. It's time to pray again. It's time to pray. And so because I was in that state of seeking God through prayer, visitations were just much louder. The hand of God was just very apparent also in every area. So you should take note that depending on how much you are seeking God, depending on how much you are basking in his presence, having a relationship with him, literally being at his feet every day, depending on how much time you're spending with him, determine how loud you hear him. And I don't want you to take that the wrong way, that it's because of my works of seeking out God. No, it's literally just the fact that you're literally training your spirit man to be more attuned to his voice. And so when you are seeking him more, your spirit man is already sensitive to the spirit. And because you're sensitive, you're going to hear him a little bit more louder. Sometimes if you're hearing audible voices, anybody else tells you that they hear the audible voice of God during the day, or whether they're not in that state of being asleep or awake, I would suggest testing that spirit, because there was only one other time that I've heard something audibly like that, and I knew it was the devil, and it was when I was in a space of being lukewarm, and I was coming back to the Lord, and the enemy did not want me to come to the Lord. And so the enemy was showing me all types of miracles, signs, and wonders to deceive me. And so just be aware that the enemy does cloak himself like an angel of light. So make sure that you're testing every spirit. That's how you hear the voice of God audibly. I'll probably do a part 3 to talk about how God speaks to you through your thoughts and other little notions that should be apparent to us. But yeah, I hope that helps.